Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing, it's precision crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision crafted performance.
Take your vibes and go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's edition of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation news from around the nation for the week of April 28th, 2025. This week brought to you by Bass Pro Shops, Richard Childress Racing, and the Kinetic Group. We thank them for their support, continued support, and leadership in the conservation space. This week's headlines: Sunday hunting restrictions upheld in North Carolina. We bring in Connor Barker here in a moment to talk about that. Agency authority to regulate baiting lost in North Dakota. Lead ammunition continues to be scrutinized in the Northeast. And finally, another successful sportsman's rally and day in Colorado. All of that and more, but let us now welcome in Connor Barker to talk about Sunday hunting restrictions in North Carolina. Connor, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks for having me. It's an interesting topic to talk about. It's something that I've been on board with CSF for a little under 2 years now, and something my predecessor, John Colclaser, worked on tirelessly. He's a lot of the credit due to him for a lot of the changes we'll discuss today, kind of where we're at. As well as the Sportsman's Caucus down there, and the commission has been helpful as well. But yeah, long story short, North Carolina is one of the few states, North Carolina and South Carolina, the only two in the Southeast. I know you've got a handful in the Northeast still that have kind of holding out on some of the Sunday hunting restrictions. And I know y'all have talked about the issue and at large really on here, so I'm going to spare a lot of those details. But yeah, laws that were passed, well over 100 years ago that are kind of puritanical and antiquated, and they're just not really in line with things today. And again, most states, Sunday hunting restrictions aren't a thing. And, I talked about this with some buddies and stuff when I took on the role here. I've got 5 states, and North Carolina and South Carolina being 2 of them. They both still had some remaining restrictions. And I always kind of, when I'm talking to friends and stuff, especially from where I'm at here in Kentucky, I was not aware of Sunday hunting restrictions really whatsoever before coming on at CSF. And it's kind of baffling to me that those are still a thing, for lack of better terms. But it's I always kind of phrase it, if you were to try to impose Sunday hunting restrictions in states that they haven't existed maybe ever for decades or centuries even, what would the response be to that? It wouldn't be very well. I know that's the case here. But long story short, North Carolina, the whole Sunday hunting battle, if you will, that CSF has been engaged in started back in 2015. A couple key pieces of legislation I'll talk about here. So in 2015, it was the Outdoor Heritage Act that ended a 145-year-old ban on Sunday hunting with firearm in North Carolina. And that allowed Sunday hunting on private property only with firearms. So fast forward to 2017, we had the Outdoor Heritage Enhanced Act, which did several things. It repealed the statutory ban on public land firearm hunting on Sundays in North Carolina. It repealed the 500 yards of hunting within a residence in North Carolina. It repealed populous counties restrictions. So there was a restriction in there that would prohibit Sunday hunting with a firearm. The 2 most populous counties in the state, I believe that was populations of greater than 700,000. So that 2017 act repealed that and repealed the statutory ban on migratory bird hunting in North Carolina. So that did several things there. Fast forward to 2021, with that 2017 act, it repealed the statutory ban on public land Sunday hunting with a firearm. So therefore, that gave the commission the ability to promulgate rules for Sunday hunting. And that's through a lot of pressure and a lot of input from the sportsman's community, a lot of that being led by CSF. In 2021, the rulemaking process opened for Sunday hunting on the rulemaking process allowed Sunday hunting with a firearm to be opened on 51 game lands in North Carolina. You ask how many game lands are there in North Carolina? That's about half. It's a little over half of the game lands. That's a huge win that came in 2021. That leaves, I think, about 42 game lands today. That was also on 4 national forests, which is important to mention as well. So the 2015 Outdoor Heritage Act, the 2017 Outdoor Heritage Enhanced Act, and then the 2021 rulemaking process. Where does that leave us today? Um, Today, that leaves a handful of restrictions, and I'll kind of lay those out. So there's currently a statutory restriction from 9:30 to 12:30 on Sundays for hunting with a firearm on private and public lands in North Carolina. And that's in our opinion, that's probably the biggest one. That's pretty restrictive, as many people on here know. 9:30, that's prime hunting time this time of year. Most people are still out chasing turkeys. I know I am at 9:30 on Sundays, and that's a huge issue there, and something that CSF will continue to apply the pressure on. Additionally, the use of a firearm to hunt deer with dogs is prohibited on Sundays, and hunting within 500 yards of a place of worship is also prohibited on Sundays. You still cannot hunt migratory birds in North Carolina on Sundays, even though it was repealed in statute. They have not passed rules to change that yet. So that is still a restriction. And then you cannot hunt on Sundays for bear with a firearm on the Coastal Bear Management Unit in North Carolina. As many people know, North Carolina is a prime bear hunting state, especially in the east. So I think I did a pretty good job, hopefully, of laying that out and that kind of where we stand now on that. But why are we talking about it now? There's not legislation or anything like that in play. There was a lawsuit that kind of brought attention to this. The CSF wasn't involved in the lawsuit officially or anything like that. But long story short, a gentleman took suit against the state, citing that essentially that Sunday hunting was unconstitutional. And really, the big point here is they highlighted it was unconstitutional based on the constitutional right to hunt and fish, which is enshrined in North Carolina's state constitution. I believe that was in 2017, 2018 when that passed. So that leaves us there. Unfortunately, that made it up to the suit started in 2020. Recently made it up to the Court of Appeals, and a 3-judge panel there at the Court of Appeals ruled unanimously against the plaintiff, or against essentially, uh, or for Sunday hunting restrictions, I guess would be the better way to phrase it. They upheld the existing Sunday hunting restrictions that I just laid out. Um, that There's an article, or TSV articles obviously up on our website. I've got a link to that Court of Appeals ruling. It's pretty heavy with some legal jargon, and again, I'm not a lawyer by any means, but I encourage you to go check that out. I think I tried to lay that out in the article and take some highlights out of that. But just to talk about a few of those here, some that caught my attention as just a layperson reading this article as a hunter. Um, Couple times the Court of Appeals cited the non-hunting public in the upheld court decision here, and what did they really say there is kind of the craziest thing is that when they were making this decision and taking everything into consideration, they quoted in there that the quote, hunters and non-hunters, and enabling non-hunters to enjoy scenic game lands without disturbance. And they go on, as a valid exercise of the state's police power, given the benefit to non-hunters who will have a guaranteed window of time during which they will definitely not be disturbed by hunting and the extended hunting season in North Carolina. So, as a hunter, I read that as the court taking the prioritizing non-hunters over that of hunters in North Carolina. And obviously, hunters are the primary funders of a lot of these game lands, a lot of these public lands that I referenced earlier. So, in my opinion, hunters should be prioritized as far as access. Not, you go on, you talk about Sunday hunting, why Sunday specifically, and, for obvious reasons, hunters are, a lot of hunters work Monday through Friday. They have kids in school Monday through Friday. So it's, if you cut out Sunday hunting, that's cutting your access by 50% in the cases of a lot of people that have those restrictions that everyday Americans have. So not only are they funding that, but they've got pretty limited access to use those resources that they're the primary funders of. So a lot of concerns there. There's also an argument brought up in the court case about compensatory days for Sunday hunting as well. Long story short, where North Carolina does not allow migratory bird hunting on Sundays, they get compensatory days. So on a calendar, yes, that does make their season longer by extending it further into the calendar year for compensating for those Sundays. And the court, reference those compensatory days. And a lot of times people would argue in favor of keeping these Sunday hunting restrictions, say, hey, we get these compensatory days, therefore our migratory bird season is longer. However, if you were to enact Sunday hunting, you would just get to hunt on Sundays, right? And you would lose the compensatory days, which is correct, but your season, the actual number of days in your season would not be any shorter. So that's kind of an odd argument to use there. But yeah, I think that's really everything I wanted to hit on that, Fred. I know I laid a lot out there, but again, the article lays out what the Sunday hunting restrictions are currently in North Carolina. I've got some links to some old articles talking about the Outdoor Heritage Act and Enhanced Act in there, as well as the Court of Appeals case. So I encourage anybody to go check that out, and hopefully that'll be a little more clear if I wasn't super clear on anything.
All great stuff, very detailed. So we're gonna try to get into a few things here before I cut you loose. So you hit on the waterfowl days, which I thought was important to bring up. We've seen this same argument pop up in our Mid Atlantic states as we roll back Sunday hunting opportunities on wild birds in Delaware. I believe this came up in Maryland as well. Yeah, you're exactly right. You're not losing dates. Technically your season's getting shorted, but also the point's been made that you're losing half your days. And as our colleague Kaylee Leager has pointed out in testimony and in prior TSV articles, if all you're able to do is hunt on Saturdays and it's a crappy day to hunt waterfowl, you're out, Chuck. You don't get to do it again till the next Saturday, assuming you can't go Monday through Friday. So having those 2 days available to you is advantageous for the waterfowl hunter. So like you said, you're not losing anything. You're getting your same days. And if again wanting to put those days back to back, put a couple days of waterfowl hunting together is a big deal, especially for the traveling non-resident hunter, right? Who comes and spends their money and contributes to the state's economy as well as that ASFC. It's a big deal. Now, I'm curious on the court because I didn't hear you say this, but it is somewhat in line with our preferred language. We've engaged on this, and the point is the agency retains the ability for rulemaking, which is an important point. Not getting the result we wanted out of this court decision is a bummer, right? Like straight up, we want to see that repealed. However, I think they get it right in agreeing that the state agency or DNR, whatever it's called there in North Carolina, they maintain that. Now we got to convince them to update and get into the 21st century and come on board and create access and roll those prohibitions back. Thoughts there?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Fred. And we also kind of mentioned that in the TSV article there that the lawsuit heavily references on both sides the constitutional right to hunt and fish in North Carolina, which includes the use of traditional methods, which is our preferred language, which we talked about on this podcast, I know, endless amount of times now. And it still allows the Wildlife Resources Commission down there the ability to regulate hunting and fishing in accordance with the law, which is obviously important. And like you said, a lot of these, it's weird, the Sunday hunting restrictions in North Carolina kind of split. You have the statutory restrictions like your 9:30 to 12:31, the big one that I talked about. But then at the same time, the commission has been throughout these acts in 2015, mainly 2017, has been given the ability to promulgate rules on Sunday hunting, and that's kind of where our migratory birds situation in North Carolina is at right now. So yeah, you're exactly right. You want to put the power in the hands of those people, and I think they're doing. That's a conversation that we've kept going for years now. And that's part of the reason we're sitting here right now talking about this. Is anytime we can keep the conversation going there in North Carolina, and it's something it's a huge undertaking in North Carolina to take this on just for cultural considerations, and it's been in statute and been in rules there in North Carolina for a long time now, and it's something that's a lot of people feel passionately about on both sides. I think most hunters probably feel with us here at the CSF, and that this is pretty restrictive on their ability to do so. The fact that the commission can change some of this is definitely something that we've had conversations with and will continue to do, and just try to chip away at this. And it's something that when we do our pre-session planning every year, we talk with those folks and see where we can make a move at there and maybe try to appeal some of these restrictions. But they've got the ability to do so, which is great, and that's a good first step.
Yeah.
So,
So another point I want to make here, and even though you've acknowledged we've hit on this in the past, it bears repeating. And uh, our vice president of policy, Brent Miller, joined me for a full feature on this, but on Sunday hunting issues in the country. But this idea of you quote here in your article about non hunters being unable to enjoy scenic game lands without disturbance, that's just a giant grift. And it really, it's, you know, you're really appealing to someone that has not a lot of information or depth on the subject. And I say that because I can go, or you could go to North Carolina, residents of North Carolina can go out and do anything they please on a Sunday except hunt. You can go fishing, you can outdoor recreate, whatever you want to do. I dare say you could probably go to a public range or a private range and blast off 10,000 rounds on a Sunday. No big deal, right? Easy. You
Right.
can go do that. But if I wanted to, or you wanted to sit in a tree stand or go hunt turkey, maybe shoot one loud shot, maybe two on average, right? If we're being honest, you're telling me that's the big disturbance? Like this is garbage. It's a terrible argument, and it's extremely discriminatory, Connor, against hunters specifically. Because as I just said, you can go out and do anything else you want on a Sunday, and folks need to acknowledge that and just be honest. And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, you can use those game lands that are, yeah, paid for primarily through hunter and angler, licensed dollars, but you can't hunt with a firearm on Sundays in North Carolina, but you can do, a whole wide variety of things out there, so it's definitely, I think you hit it on the head there, so that's kinda where we're at, and you talked about it earlier, and I just wanna hit it again, is that, um, it cutting axe, that's my favorite argument, if there's such a thing, that's my favorite argument to use and to, to go against these Sunday hunting restrictions really, is that it's a 50% loss of access for people that want to hunt on public land with a firearm or hunt between that 9:30 and 12:30. That's a 50% loss of access for probably, I don't know what the number would be, but extremely high percentage of North Carolinians and Americans in general that, like you and myself, that work Monday to Friday, can't get out and hunt, that lose access to that, right? And you lose the ability to take a 2-day hunting trip with your family, even in-state, out-of-state, whatever it is. You're just hunting on Saturdays, you had bad weather. There's endless arguments for that, that I think even people that aren't hunters should still be able to understand, right? That same concept could apply to taking a weekend golf trip with your buddies or anything like that. Taking that ability to do that on a Sunday away is extremely, extremely restrictive.
And I just can't help but think like the the folks that aren't out there hunting, like, are they just out there en masse in these spots? And my point is, people that are licensed to hunt that are going out there doing it, like, they don't wanna be around these spots where people are just walking and walking their dogs and, as you put it, enjoying the scenic game lands, like, they're probably big enough spaces where we can all be the same, enjoy the same
Sure.
thing, just on opposite
Yeah.
ends. Your deer hunter, your waterfowl, your turkey hunter, we want nothing to do with your bike paths, your walking path, nothing. Get away. We want to be away from each other so we can all enjoy it in our different ways. But the two together, um, obviously aren't conducive to that enjoyment. So my point again, the separation, and then you don't have that overlap. So again, I think it's another grift. I think it's another BS talking point, quite frankly, about this these boogeyman hunters really just taking away from the natural experience on a Sunday.
Yeah, yeah, and just to clarify, like you said, hunters, it's not a battle. I'm not trying to put this as hunters versus non-hunters or anything like that. I mean, most hunters are pretty open and accepting to anybody that wants to use that game lands in a respectful manner for whatever it is. And I made sure I tried to make that clear in the article too, that it's not, we support, CSF and myself and probably most hunters in North Carolina support, a diverse use of public lands, whether that be state game lands or national forest or whatever it is. It's not a grift against them by any means, but, and also out of all the things that court case cites all sorts of different things, and I encourage you to read it, but that's the reason I pulled those couple specific
Yeah.
quotes out, is because that was the thing that really almost jumped off the paper when you're reading that, and you're just like, "Holy cow, that doesn't seem like a very valid reason." It seems very superficial, if you will.
But unfortunately, this is a common theme throughout the where are we at? 8 or so states that have these restrictions or some variation of, and we continue to acknowledge that Massachusetts and Maine continue to get it wrong with the last 2 states out of 50 that have an outright prohibition on Sunday hunting.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's common tack and it's a cheap crap argument. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, yeah, we'll keep working on it in North Carolina and South Carolina, at least on my end, and yeah, we'll go from there. But again, a lot of big wins thanks to CSF, and a lot of big wins thanks to a lot of people, really, a lot of partners down there in North Carolina, sportsman-led partners, and but there's still a lot of work to be done. So if you're a North Carolinian, don't let it fall to the side, and something we'll be working on, and we'll be having those conversations with in the months and years to come.
Very good. Connor, we're going to leave it there. Thanks for your reporting. Thanks for your work and efforts. And we'll look forward to future reporting, hopefully with better news on North Carolina Sunday hunting. Appreciate you.
Yep. Thanks, Brett.
All right. My thanks to Connor for his contributions and his time on a very important subject. Again, even if you don't, like Connor acknowledged that, most of you don't have Sunday hunting restrictions or run into this, but you may travel to a state someday and have goals and aspirations of outdoor pursuits. And most of us try to couple that with a weekend strategically so we're not burning up our PTO days. This may not be an option for you, and you should care. And ultimately, that access matters not only to the residents, but to non resident hunters as well. So that fight continues and will continue for some time, unfortunately. And as I've beaten to death, definitely in the state of Massachusetts and Maine, where they just continue to get it wrong. And there's so much to love about both states, but not this. Before we get on with the headlines, housekeeping, as always, please, folks, ladies and gentlemen, do follow, subscribe to the program. You can do that right now as long as you're not driving. Go to this episode, whether you're listening to us on Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, wherever, you're able to, on those three, follow and subscribe. Apple and Spotify, you're able to do a 5-star rating. We appreciate it if you take the time right now and do all of that. By the time I'm finished talking, you could have already done this. It's that quick, it's that fast. And your support matters and continues to help this program become discoverable to new listeners and its continued growth. So we thank you for that, for those that have already done that, and those that continue to listen. If you've been with us from the beginning and you haven't subscribed or followed, what are you waiting for? Let's go. Do it now, and we thank you for it. All right, let's get into the rest of the headlines here. Not great news out of, North Dakota. The agency authority to regulate baiting has been lost in North Dakota. This from Jake Gould. Earlier in the legislative session, North Dakota legislators introduced a bill that would prohibit the North Dakota Game and Fish Department from adopting or implementing policies on baiting or supplemental feeding on private property, and the bill ultimately passed both chambers and was signed into law by the governor. Removing management tools from the belt of state fish and wildlife agencies can be a harm to their ability to protect the species that sportsmen and women love to pursue. North Dakota Senate Bill 2137 passed and now prohibits North Dakota Game and Fish Department from adopting and implementing any policies on baiting or supplemental feeding for hunting big game animals on private property. Efforts to strip the agency authority to promulgate policies on baiting on private property date back to 2023, where similar legislation was ultimately defeated. CSF was active every step of the way in submitting testimony in opposition of 2137 to both committees, members of the North Dakota Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus, and the governor's office. In mid-April, Senate Bill 2137 was signed into law by the governor, and as we said earlier, stripping the agency of their authority to implement and adopt policies on baiting and use of supplemental feeding. CSF, along with several conservation partners, remain active in opposing 2137 at every stage of the legislative process. CSF maintains that wildlife management authority should remain with the state agency. State fish and wildlife agencies, like the one in North Dakota, are the entities best equipped to address fish and wildlife management issues. North Dakota Game and Fish is comprised of capable professionals that carry out the on-ground science-based conservation efforts, and legislation like Senate Bill 2137 severely impacts the agency's ability to make wildlife management decisions that benefit all North Dakotans. CSF will continue to advocate for policies that afford state fish and wildlife agencies the autonomy to make and carry out sound science-based management decisions for the benefit of hunters, anglers, and the species they pursue. Yeah, I mean, from this, aside from the obvious of not letting those professionals be able to do their job, it bears repeating an acknowledgement, and I'm certain this was part of the argument that critters are not readers of maps. Critters don't have Onyx or Hunt Stand and do not understand political boundaries as they may be. So, what now in North Dakota, what you have is the ability for people on private lands to, have these groups of critters gather en masse. I'm not sure what the CWD issue is in North Dakota. 32 some odd states have CWD, and probably is there. But yeah, again, I'm acknowledging I don't know. But if it does exist, this supplemental feeding, gathering critters and ungulates together, certainly based on what's out there, can and could present a problem with transmission and getting other animals sick. It's just it's good practice not to be feeding these critters all year round and having some sort of formula, some sort of science based on that, this supplemental feeding, it's not natural. Critters got to eat. I know some of this happens in some of the western states for migratory critters and try to help them out when the winters are tougher, maybe there's severe drought, things like that. But that is off the science and the professionals making those recommendations and when and how that's prescribed and how to do that, right? So, just leaving it up to, Joe Blow, private landowner out there with all the supplemental feed is, it's a horrible idea. It's a shame that this passed, and, hopefully in future sessions, there's a way to repeal this or find some sort of solve that everyone can get a hold of. So, we thank Jake for his reporting and, too bad there in North Dakota. Moving on, lead ammunition continues to be scrutinized in the Northeast. This coming from yours truly. This is more of a recap of this session here in the Northeast with the addition of Maine House Bill 887 that was introduced during the special session that Maine is currently in, which would direct the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife to study the impacts and risks of wildlife, humans, and the environment of using lead-based ammunition to hunt and submit that report with its finding and recommendations to the Joint Standing Committee on Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. This bill was tabled in mid-April during committee work session. Other examples during this session were Maryland House Bill 741, Senate Bill 634 that sought to require the Department of Natural Resources to phase out the use of non-lead ammunition. Both of those bills failed, as we previously reported. And currently in New York, Senate Bill 4954 and Assembly Bill 1089 would prohibit the use of lead ammunition and the taking of wildlife on wildlife management areas, state forests, forest preserves, state parks, or any other state-owned land that is open for hunting and on land contributing to the contributing surface water to the New York City water supply. These bills currently sit in the Senate and Assembly committees on environmental conservation, respectively. So we, CSF, have worked with our Maine Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus leadership to combat the proposed directive aimed at the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife to study lead impacts on wildlife and humans. For now, as I said earlier, 887 has been tabled, but surely some future confrontation over the use of lead ammo in Maine will return. And leaders in the state have already signaled they are willing to stand down and allow the inevitable, air finger quote, the inevitable to happen. That doesn't have to happen that way. We can all coalesce and certainly get together and have these discussions and arguments about some of the junk science that's out there. And ultimately, as we've covered on this program, there isn't sufficient enough broad based science study to back up these claims. Much of it is prescriptive and localized. I digress. Rest assured, CSF and our in-state caucus leaders and partners stand ready to fight lead ammo bans as they are attempted and when they inevitably come up in the very short future, unfortunately. And then going back to Maryland, like I said, previously reported those bills sought to phase out lead ammo by July 1st, 2029. Due to our good efforts and with partners, um, those two bills were killed. CSF in New York is also well engaged, where the lawmakers are raising concerns about New York City water supply and potential contamination. A ban on the use of traditional ammunition on hunters would have a statistically irrelevant impact on the amount of water in the New York City water supply, but would have potentially serious ramifications of suppressing hunting and the associated conservation funding utilized by New York State Department Conservation. New York City Environmental Protection, which provides services to New York City, states on their city website New York City drinking water is lead free when it is delivered from the city's upstate reservoirs to distribution systems. Very good. CSF is working with our caucus leadership and in state partners to avoid the negative ramifications of such policy. And CSF continues to monitor the movement of both Senate 4954 and Assembly 1089. Yeah, and this is not just a new Northeast issue, but certainly one we saw up here as we look back and continue to work through some of the sessions as Maine and New York are still in. But yeah, it's not going away. We have ideas on how to do this and incentive based phase outs. But you look at the current state of things, between tariffs and trade wars and the material that isn't found or mined here in the States, these alternate materials in tungsten and bismuth and whatever else is out there. It's cost prohibitive. The stuff's super expensive. There's not enough supply, and a lot of it's coming from overseas. So you couple all that together right now, that would be very detrimental to folks' wallets, access. Some of the stuff just isn't made in certain rounds in certain calibers, which now all of a sudden you had a rifle chambered in a specific caliber that is useless to you, at least for hunting, which is also no good. So it's not going away, but we, along with our partners, will stand ready to fight such attempts when they come. Wrapping up the show here. Despite challenges, Colorado sportsmen and women unite at the Capitol. This coming from Barry Snell. Another Sportsman's Day in Colorado, in Denver. Approximately 600 sportsmen and women gathered on the lawn of the Colorado Capitol on Friday, April 25th, to celebrate Sportsman's Day at the Capitol. Presentations were given by Colorado's Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus co-chairs Senator Dylan Roberts and Rod Pelton, and Representatives Megan Lunkins and Ryan Armagost, who gave speeches of support along with our partners at CRWN, that's Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, Dan Gates, our past guest, and Colorado Wildlife Conservation Project. The members of the House and Senate showed their support by running Joint Resolution 25-1028 at the same time, declaring April 25th as Colorado Sportsman's Day 2025. Barry continues, 2025 has been an interesting year for sportsmen and women in Colorado, coming off the monumental victory defeating Prop 127 last November, as a reminder, which would have banned mountain lion hunting, bobcat hunting, and then the use of hounds. Our coalition has managed to use that momentum to achieve some wins in the commission and in the legislature in the ensuing months. However, politics is rarely a winner takes all situation. And despite the Prop 127 results, revealing that Colorado public is clearly on the side side of scientific wildlife management, Coloradans who truly believe in wildlife conservation have nonetheless been faced with many challenges in the legislature this year, especially with respect to fire harm. It is it is this political backdrop that Sportsman's Day at the Capitol was held this year, and with everything going on, it was a very welcome day of fellowship and celebration in the Mile High City. With those 600 sportsmen and women gathered on the Capitol lawn to enjoy wild game burgers and brats, and to hear from legislators in their voice supporting for their issues, CSF Assistant Manager of the Southwestern States, Barry Snell, kicked things off by welcoming everyone and introducing co-chairs who spoke on behalf of specifically Senator Roberts, who spoke on behalf of the caucus, highlighting the challenges we currently face in Colorado and how the alliance between the caucus and sportsmen and women was critical to meeting those challenges. Several of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation and state partners, like Dan Gates with CRWM and Gasper Perricone with CWCP, also spoke to the crowd about the good work we're doing together to defend and advance hunting, fishing, trapping, and recreational shooting, and how Colorado's abundant wildlife resources are being managed. Meanwhile, as the crowd was gathered on the lawn, the House and Senate ran a concurrent joint resolution in support of Colorado sports folks. Joint Resolution 25-1028 declares April 25th, as I said earlier, Colorado Sportsman's Day 2025. The resolution was sponsored by all Colorado Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus co-chairs in the House and Senate and urged all members of the Colorado legislature to join the Sportsmen's Caucus. A copy of the resolution was ordered to be sent to Colorado Parks and Wildlife Director Jeff Davis. CSF extends its thanks to all the volunteers who helped put on a tremendous event and to all who attended. We look forward to seeing everyone again next year. Yeah, that's great news. You remember last year, we covered that event as well on this program. I think if memory serves, the weather might not have been super great, but they still had a good turnout and lots of motivation by lots of poor policy being advanced in that state. Nothing has changed, obviously. And to Barry's point, now more than ever, folks need to come together and work together in Colorado to stop bad stuff. Troubling times in that state, to be sure. That's our show. That's it. I think we covered it all. Got out of here in relatively short order. So thanks for hanging with us. Our friends, our partners, our supporters at Bass Pro Shops want to remind you that the voting is on for the nation's top aquarium. Now, in the years past, Wonders of Wildlife Aquarium there in Springfield, Missouri has been voted the top aquarium in the country, I think, for multiple years running. So that currently is happening. So if you have a couple minutes and you want to go vote for the top aquarium, I'm sure our good friends and Johnny Morris as well would appreciate your vote and support for Wonders of Wildlife for the top aquarium in the country. So you can go there and do that now. Feature episode coming up on the 1st. That's tomorrow. Going to catch up with the director in Wyoming, Angie Bruce. Sat down with her for a full feature episode. You might remember our conversation from our SHOT Show coverage back in January. A lot of what we talked about today going to be covered in there with Director Bruce. And also even the point of this Colorado craziness, that stuff tends to bleed over and the director addresses some of that, why it's important for Wyoming to stay Wyoming. So really enjoyed the time and the opportunity to catch up with her. So do tune in for that feature presentation tomorrow. We will be back next Wednesday with more news from around the nation. If you're out there chasing turkeys, continued luck, be safe. Update from New Hampshire's youth season. I said last week, I hope to have positive news, and indeed I do. My young son was able to fill not one, but both of his New Hampshire turkey tags on 2 different days. 2 different weather days, and it was great. So I hope all the moms and dads out there with their kids are experiencing the same. I truly think there's nothing better than watching young folks, especially in the turkey woods, fill in their tags. It's cliche to say, but I mean it and stand by it. It's much preferred to watch the little ones get out there and do it and achieve their goals than it is for me to go fill my own tags. I thoroughly enjoy it. You all know that, but watching the kids get after it is just it's awesome. If you're not there yet with your little ones, stand by. It's going to be a lot of fun when you get there, and hopefully they dig it too. So, continued success out there. Uh, Tomorrow, most of the seasons are, I think all the seasons are in now. Um, Across the Northeast, we're opening up as you listen to this program on Wednesday or maybe Thursday. I will definitely be in the turkey woods at some point. So, I hope you do too. Get home safe and practice all your safety as it pertains to turkey hunting and getting home safe. So we thank you guys as always for your support. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next Wednesday for this show. And that'll be it. Thanks so much. So long. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.